So the levels are the next thing, and this is the stages of development or the levels of development, and we can look at humanity as a whole. We can look at the cosmos as a whole, but the humanity, we can also look at each of us as individuals. Both are evolving, and if we look historically, they have evolved. And interestingly enough, they evolve in the four quadrants. And it's like you were saying, Namali, that we talk about tetra arising, that all four of these quadrants, they're interpenetrated. They're irreducible, but they arise together. And so we could see that Jeff, I have evolved from a, toddler to me in all four quadrants, and that they have evolved together, and that we can see that with humanity. Typically it's 6 levels, but it's pre-traditional, which would be tribal. There's traditional, which is more mythic and based on a transcendent God. There's modern, and there's postmodern. And we can see that one of the first applications of this is looking at the world today. And we can see that particularly in the developed world, that there are 3 stages that are online. And they're actually the 3 stages that are online for most of us as individuals as well. We have a postmodern mind, we have a modern mind, and we have a traditional mind, God and country kind of thing. We have modern, which is secular, all the religion, all that, all the interiors are explained away. And then we have postmodern, which is multicultural and seeking to sort of redress the grievances of the past, of histories. And all of those there are people who are magnetized to all 3 of those. There are actually people who are magnetized earlier as well. But for just good back pocket thinking, it's these 3. So we have the God and country folk, and we have the postmodern multiculturalists, and they just naturally hate each other. And again, I would register a complaint to God, because it does seem inevitable that we would hate each other, but it's brutal. And so anyway, these stages come online sequentially, and they also come online sequentially in me as an individual. So I was born in sort of a pre-conscious, pre-self-conscious oceanic merger with a mother. And most of us, if we have an adequate mother, we get that sort of thing, and we're safe in that world. And then I am arises, and I start to realize that, wait, I'm different than my mother. And humanity did that too. That was a fall from paradise, by the way. It's like, it's inevitable if you continue to grow, but it hurts, because all of a sudden I realize I can be hurt. At some point I realize I'm gonna die. Humanity realizes that. No other animal does. So you can see this fall from paradise thing actually has a deep resonance. You mean I have to go on this journey of individuation and proms and, grad school and taxes and but yes, apparently we do. And so I woke up into that next stage, which is an egocentric stage, where it's me against the world, essentially. And then a bigger stage where I begin to identify with my family and community and so forth. And so I moved from a world of magic, where as a little kid, I could put on a cape and actually fly, and there were monsters under the bed. It's upside and downside to magic. And then magic kind of gets superseded by, in my case, Christianity and transcendent God. And if we look historically, the move into traditionalism, one of their jobs was to suppress magic. So we melted down all the golden calves, we burned the witches, and all power was invested into a transcendent God in the sky. And so that's a move, that's a developmental move for humanity and for me as Jeff. So I moved into being the good little Christian kid until, I don't know, I was 13 or 14, and my dad gave me the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And my dad wasn't buying the religious thing. He allowed my mother to do that, and it was all good. He didn't interfere. But at some point, he gave me that book. And so I read that like a lot of adolescents and was blown away into a whole new world of secular, where religion was ridiculed and cast out completely. And I was good with that. I was ready for that. And so I move into a modern world, and I go to school, and I learn science, and I go to college, and I, you know, all these things just as humanity. We realize that thunder isn't God being mad at us. It's actually just ions that are doing whatever they do. And, you know, the upside is we gain this amazing knowledge of the world. And as humanity and as individuals, by using logic and measurement and science and testing and experiments and all of these amazing things that are an inevitable move forward. It's how children grow, it's how humanity grew. And yet we lose something at every stage. And so we think about that magic that we lost. And how many adults mourn the lack of magic and sparkle in their lives that they had when they were kids, and they don't know why they lost it. And Integral helps us see that you lose it on schedule. It's part of the deal. And you have to at least compartmentalize your great religious myths if you're going to really move into modernity. Maybe you believe you keep one foot in both camps, and people are in all kinds of sort of cognitive dissonance about these things, because we move forward in probability clouds, humanity and each of us as individuals. But we can see what's lost. And the promise of Integral is that we get to reintegrate all of it. Now, we still have a ways to go before we do. We have to move through modernity. Post-modernity is where we start questioning, is that all there is? We see that reason and science actually brought us concentration camps and nuclear bombs. And you know, that the idea that that was going to save us has, was blown away by the first half of the 20th century. I mean, did we need any more than that to see that reason wasn't going to save us? So that we move into post-modernity, which is a great sort of dismantling of all of the previous triumphalist stories that reason was going to save us, that religion was going to save us, that my tribe was going to be the one that, rules above all. All of those are blown away. And with it, the idea of absolute truth, or truth in general. There's a deconstruction of truth as a thing. And that's, again, right on schedule. But it leaves people alienated. Modernity does too, because we've lost God. We lost magic. We lost myth. We lost destiny, reason. That we're not seen and loved by any intelligence at all. And we're just on this rock hurtling through space. And, so post-modernity seeks to develop a new world that is dedicated to bringing the victims of the previous stages. So the people who are left out of capitalism, the people who have been left out of the white, monolithic cultures of the leading edge of development, which was mostly Western Europe. And that is, what post-modernity is involved with today, the breaking down of gender ideas and race and, looking at the downsides of capitalism and the growth economy and wanting to move into a sustainable economy and becoming world-centric. We move from egocentric to ethnocentric, we call it. That's family and tribe and nation maybe. And then we move into world-centric. And of course, not everybody does. There are people who are very happy being ethnocentric. About 30% of the people in the United States and in the Western world, there's a significant that do. In many countries, that's, the majority of people. They're not interested in modernity. They are interested in God. And so it's this mess that is this evolving, I think of it sometimes as an evolving catastrophe, moving up through these levels, through these stages, until we get to integral, where finally we can lay down our arms, or at least begin to try to practice that. And I always think of something, this is Namali, Chogyam Trungpa, the guy who founded Naropa, one of his teachings that always stuck with me. And I think it's just such a great integral practice, and I think he had a lot of integral sensibility. But he said, if you actually look at another human being and really see them, that there's only one appropriate response. And that is, oh, because, it ain't easy for any of us. And from an integral perspective, one of the great insights and sort of shifts, Ken often talks about it being psychoactive, is that we get to see that everybody gets to be who they are, and they get to be where they are, and they're not defective versions of me. And reality is not so obvious, because in these earlier stages, everybody thinks their reality or their worldview is the only one that's right, and everybody else is wrong. You can't believe that Jesus is the only way to salvation and tolerate people who don't feel that way. You're just naturally at war. And so at Integral, we think, maybe we could still love Jesus, but we just don't have to think that that's the only way. And we could see, like, for instance, for me, to integrate my God teachings of my childhood and to feel seen and loved by a personal, loving intelligence. I don't know much more than that about it, but I can experience it. It's like Carl Jung said, I don't believe in God, I know God. It's something like that. But at the same time, to appreciate my Buddhist teachings on emptiness. I can't imagine having a spiritual life without both of those fully online, even though they contradict each other. And wars have been fought over that kind of stuff, but no more. And that's the promise of Integral.